Under Connecticut law, candidates for governor and lieutenant governor run separately. And with us today is one of those seeking the state's #2 job. He is State Senator Joe Markley, a Republican. And Senator Markley, good to see you here on the program.
Pleasure to be back with you, Dennis.
What made you decide to walk away from a job where you had a lot of power to run for lieutenant governor, which is a job that some would say doesn't really have a lot of power?
I'm determined to see the state go in a different direction. I've had 8 years of Dan Malloy doing everything wrong, in my opinion, and unable to stop him as a state senator. I want to be part of a winning Republican team in November that will turn the state around and start pro-growth policies, and that's what I joined the ticket for.
You are described as the conservative of the state Senate. Which of the candidates running for governor right now is most politically and philosophically aligned with you?
I really couldn't say. I have to say I've spent months with them out on the campaign trail. I think all of them are saying the right thing, that we need to get government spending under control, we need to restore a good business climate, and let private industry bring prosperity back to the state. I'm delighted to run with any one of them. I'm convinced that the voters are ready for a change in direction.
Who's the strongest candidate right now, do you think?
The person who emerges from this primary is going to prove themselves to be the strongest candidate.
This signature phenomenon we're having this year is kind of new to Connecticut, to have this many people. David Stemmerman turned in over 20,000, Bob Stefanowski about 15,000, we're told. Does it surprise you that we have so many people out there who still want more candidates on the ballot?
It almost surprises me that it hasn't happened before, because we've had the ability to petition onto the primary for a long time. I think maybe the time has come to look at our system and ask whether we need to go through this convention process, or like most states, we should simply go right into a petition-driven primary.
Let me ask you about the pay equity bill, which was signed into law by Governor Malloy just recently. You were the only person to vote against it. And now there are some who want to brand you as anti-woman because of it. Is that fair?
Of course I'm not anti-woman, so I wouldn't say it's fair.
Well, why did you vote against it?
I voted. It wasn't a pay equity bill, Dennis. You know, it was really, to my mind, it was a bill about speech. The only thing that bill said was that an employer and an employee couldn't discuss the employee's previous salary. I don't think that's going to result in an amazing change in pay equity. It's the kind of political gotcha that I think people in the state are tired of. And you know, I'm just not going to be bullied into supporting things because it has a title that sounds good. I think it was kind of nonsense. It was a further restriction on business and the ability for people to work things out between themselves. And I wasn't going to go along with it just to go along.
What is your view on men and women being paid the same amount of money for the same job?
I think it goes without saying that they ought to be, that we all have to be treated as human beings. Male or female, regardless of race, religion, or creed, we should be rewarded and compensated for what we do in the workplace.
If you are lieutenant governor, and let's say you're the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, would you vote for a toll bill?
No, absolutely not.
Legalization of marijuana?
Not that either.
What about a casino in Bridgeport?
You know, I don't want to get too far down the road of theoreticals. And when you start to talk about something like a casino, I think there's a lot of aspects of that you'd have to know what they were before you could answer the question. But I will say this. I think the lieutenant governor has a vote. It's been a key vote in the past. We have a state income tax because the lieutenant governor casts the deciding vote. We have a CBAC agreement till 2027 because of that. If I have that vote, as is likely to happen in a Senate as divided as it is, I will exercise my own judgment about what I think is the best thing for the state.
The Democrats will have a split gender ticket this fall for governor and lieutenant governor. The Republicans, if you win, will be an all-male ticket. What is the argument that you would say to people that shouldn't make a difference?
I would say that if you're in the party of Abraham Lincoln, the party that says that we should be judged as judged on the content of our character, as another great man said, that's the question that we have to be asking, not what our identity happens to be. That identity politics is something that I think belongs to the radical left. It's not a Republican principle.
What makes you a better candidate than the other two candidates running for lieutenant governor in your party, Jamie Stevenson, the first selectman of Darien, and the mayor of New Britain, Aaron Stewart?
I have been the most consistent in standing up for the principles of the Republican Party. Fiscal responsibility, opposition to tax increases, personal liberty, respecting our rights as citizens. I haven't wavered in those things. And I think the voters of Connecticut want a strong signal this fall and a sharp change in direction. And I think I can provide that and I can articulate it.
How is President Trump viewed in your district, your state Senate district right now?
I think when we see the way the economy is going, when we see the things he's been able to do in foreign policy and the appointments he's made, I think there's a lot of support for Donald Trump. I don't think there's very many people who voted for Trump who are disappointed. If anything, I think some of the people that were worried about him have come around.
So if he says, I want to come to Connecticut and campaign for some Republicans, would you want to campaign with him?
I'd be proud to campaign with the president.
Let's talk about some of the other issues that likely will be coming up next year. And we talked about tolls briefly, just a yes or no, but it's going to be a big discussion. Certainly it's going to come up because the state has to make some extra money. If not tolls, if not marijuana, if not another casino, then what will it be?
I don't accept your premise, Dennis. I don't think the state needs more money. I think our problem is a spending problem. I think we eventually have to work this out without raising revenue. I saw Dan Malloy enact the two biggest tax increases in state history. And we still have a deficit, a bigger deficit than we had when he took over. That medicine isn't working, and we've got to stop applying it. We've got to break this addiction to spending and taxes, and it's going to be painful, like breaking any addiction. But that's what I want to see happen under a Republican administration.
Back in 1991, you were one of the leaders against the state income tax, which was later signed into law by Governor Lowell Weicker in the summer of 1991, and you, of course, led the big protest at the Capitol. Do you think, looking back on it, that it was a mistake to pass this because there's been no effort to get rid of it?
I think there was an enormous mistake to pass it, and the reason it was a mistake was it enabled this spending addiction. State spending has risen at 3.5 times the rate of inflation since we passed the state income tax. That was a crossroads. We had a choice of saying, do we get spending under control, or do we raise taxes and allow spending to go on unchecked? We took the wrong road. I felt it at the time. I think that history has proven me correct.
Candidate David Stemmerman wants to reduce the income tax. Candidate Mark Boughton wants to get rid of it altogether. Who's right?
Well, I would love to see it eliminated. I think it's a long-term project. The first thing I want to do, again, to go back to your earlier question, is not to keep making the same mistake, not to raise taxes, to live within our means, and then make targeted tax cuts that will promote growth in Connecticut.
Senator Joe Markley, candidate for Lieutenant Governor of the Republican Party. Thanks for being with us today. Best of luck.
My pleasure. Thank you.
In the primary. When we come back, we'll talk with a local nonprofit organization that's doing some great work to help a beleaguered part of Hartford. And we welcome your comments. You can tweet me right now, find me on Instagram or Facebook.